Ms. Fairman, you are charged with the offense of interference with the duties of a public servant. You are facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you, ma'am.
Yes, Judge. Officers were dispatched to a family disturbance, and the caller, the defendant's mother, stated that her daughter was walking around with a hammer and identified her daughter by name and as wearing a Barbie sweatshirt. In transit to the scene, the officers observed the defendant's prior mugshot and arrived and observed the defendant recognized by description in that mugshot. The defendant walked towards the officer, and the officers told her to stop, but she ignored them. She had her arms tucked into her sweatshirt, so they were not visible to the officers. The defendant attempted to walk past the officer, and the officer grabbed her arm, and she then laid on the ground and tucked her hands under her abdomen, and the officer struggled to get her arms out from under her. The defendant stated the defendant had a hammer in her left hand and would not let go. The officers then took her into custody.
What's she doing wrong? Is she walking while black? I mean, really, you tell me all she has is a hammer? She's walking around with a hammer. So I hammer stuff all the time.
Right, just what we have is there was a family disturbance. There was a description of her with the hammer, and she walked towards the officer, and the officer just told her to stop.
I mean, there's nothing. She's not doing anything. No one says that she's doing anything menacing with the hammer. She's walking with a hammer. I hang stuff on my house all the time.
Furthermore, Your Honor, there is more in the DIMS that in the complete DIMS it says the complainant's defendant's mother identified her and said that the defendant's brother had taken a blue speaker which upset the defendant and went outside and kicked some trash cans over her and pacing around a neighbor's vehicle holding a hammer. The complainant advised she was afraid of the defendant. So, yes, Judge.
I'm with you. Don't worry about it. I'm going to find no probable cause. Just hang tight with me for a second, okay?
Good, Judge.
Please. Just, take a seat. Hang tight, please. Good morning, Ms. Wimbush. Ma'am, you are charged with interference with the duties of a public servant. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you.
On September 26, 2024, at approximately 1:15 p.m., an officer responded to a call at the TSU Library Center located at 3100 Claiborne Street in Harris County, Texas, regarding a disturbance. The officer made contact with the individual causing the disturbance, and the defendant approached asking officers what's going on and what did she do. The officers repeatedly asked the defendant to step back, and she became belligerent, asserting that they were at her store. She eventually complied and moved away, but she insisted that a police supervisor be called to the scene. TSU Sergeant Barnett arrived and spoke privately with the defendant. Afterwards, responding officer requested the defendant's information to report her behavior to her supervisor in the university. The defendant refused to provide it and attempted to bypass the officer. When the officer asked her to identify herself again, the defendant declined and attempted to walk away. As the officer tried to detain her, she began to throw herself on the ground and yell, escalating the disturbance. Several officers issued verbal commands for her to comply. The defendant continued to resist, jumping around and asserting her rights. The officer attempted to escort her outside. The defendant then wrapped her arms and legs around a pole, continuing to yell. The officers physically pried her from the pole and detained her. The defendant used her body weight to resist and push against the officers. The defendant was then placed in the back of the patrol car without incident.
What was she doing wrong?
So it appears she wasn't the initial person causing the disturbance, but when they came to respond to the disturbance that they were called for, she intervened. And once they asked her to remove herself from the situation,
You didn't say, when you initially started saying about everything, you didn't say that she was the initial cause of the disturbance, that there was a call for a disturbance. They get out there and she, I guess.
So what it says is that they made contact with the individual that was causing the disturbance, and then the defendant approached asking.
See, right. So she just comes up, starts being nosy, right?
Right.
And then she basically, I guess, is trying to leave. And then they start asking her for her information.
Well, they were asking her to leave the scene so that they can respond to the disturbance, and she wouldn't comply. I think that's the issue, that she wouldn't leave when they asked her.
Did you say that?
Yes. They asked her to move away from the scene and she refused to comply.
Show me, will you read that part again?
So when she approached the officers repeatedly asked the defendant to step back, and the defendant became belligerent, asserting that they were at her store. She eventually complied and moved away, but
So she complies, she moves away,
right. But then she came back.
okay?
And so at that point, when she returned, they asked her to identify herself. She refused to provide her identification. And then at that point, when they asked her to identify herself, she attempted to bypass the officers.
She leaves, she's trying to leave.
She is attempting to, she's
leaving.
attempting to leave again.
And then they start bucking up to her.
Sure, yeah.
Judge, what is this case?
It's on for tomorrow's docket. Let me give you the cause number. 251-1137.
It sounds like interference.
That's what she's charged with. But so sounds like she's got a case of the nosies, you know? She goes up there allegedly being nosy, leaves, comes back, and then they start asking for her information. She declines to give her information.
Judge, what I'm looking at here, just to add context to the situation, she approaches in an unrelated incident, it looks like.
Correct.
She's asking what's going on. Fine. They talk to her individually. Okay. They tell her to leave. She continually asks what's going on. What did she do? She asserts, she becomes belligerent, is what the officer says, asserting that they were at her store, obstructing their investigation. Eventually, I don't know what the time frame is, but they say eventually she complies, moves away, but insisted that they need to call a supervisor to the area. A sergeant then spoke with her privately. After they responded and they requested her information to report her behavior to her supervisor at the university, and to identify her, which she refused to do. She then attempts to bypass officers. They ask her for identification again. They're detaining her. She says no.
But what's the interference? What did she specifically do?
Well,
She's just talking to them.
I understand,
Right.
Judge. She's talking to them, but she's saying that they're at her store. She's belligerent, telling them to leave. They're at her store. The position of the state judge is that did obstruct their investigation. I mean, it's not in this. There's multiple senses of obstruction in our opinion. It's not.
Are you losing right now? Okay. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do it. All right, I'll find no probable cause.
I'll dismiss the case, Judge.
When you go up and you get into a pissing match with officers, who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? Every single time. If you go up and you mess with someone who has the power of arrest, you're going to lose every single time. Don't go. It's not hard. I found no probable cause in your case, ma'am. Just be careful. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If I want to press charges,
Don't. You know what? Let sleeping dogs lie. Don't.
they assaulted me. Though. They knocked out my tooth. They chipped my tooth. I got bruises on me.
And you can always go file a complaint with Internal Affairs.
That's what I'm asking.
Whatever.
How could I do that? I don't know the protocols.
So, what agency was this? Is this? Did you say it was at a college or?
Yes.
Okay. So you go to the Texas Southern University Police. You go to Internal Affairs, and you can file a complaint that way. Okay, I would take everything that you have, and that's how you do it. Okay, but just be careful.
I can't really go back to my job because they're trying to ban me.
I don't know. I mean, did they issue some kind of trespass warning?
No, sir.
If there's a trespass warning, be careful. I don't see that one has been filed. They haven't told me about any kind of trespass or anything, so just be careful, okay? But I found no probable cause. They're going to dismiss your case, okay? Just be careful in the future, all right, ma'am? Okay, please. Why on two different sides? You embarrassed to be with your mom? Okay.
I separate
Got it.
family and spectator.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy, you're charged with possession of marijuana. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. Shh. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you, sir. Yes, Judge. Okay.
On November 22nd, 2024, the officer observed the defendant's vehicle parked more than 18 inches from a curb on a public roadway in the right lane of a two-way road in Harris County, Texas. While the officer ran the motor vehicle, the passenger side door opened, a black female exited, and the female approached the patrol vehicle. The officer made contact with the female and observed a strong odor of marijuana emanating from the female. The officer made contact with the defendant, the driver of the vehicle, and observed a strong odor of marijuana and had the defendant exit the motor vehicle. A PC search was conducted and the officer located 3.5 in the driver's side door and one blue package with Oops All Berry on the front containing green leafy substance on the rear driver's side floorboard, one red package with Fruity Pebbles on the front containing a green leafy substance in the back seat, and two clear plastic baggies containing green leafy substance under the front right passenger seat. The officer also observed one burnt marijuana cigar behind the front passenger seat and one small chunk of loose green leafy substance in between the driver's seat and the door. The green leafy substance was identified as marijuana based on training experience, and the weight was 54 grams or 1.9 ounces.
He was doing what that was wrong?
So he was parked more than 18 inches from the curb on the right lane of a two-way road. So he
How
was out.
on earth are you going to know that you're parking more than 18 inches? What time of day or night was this?
Your Honor.
Is it parking while black now? Come on.
Yeah.
Your Honor, there's no time listed. It just says the officer was on patrol around the 3518 block of Arbor Glen Drive when he observed the vehicle parked more than 18 inches from the curb.
And so he goes up to the car because of that?
No, Your Honor, a female passenger side exited the passenger side and approached their vehicle, and he observed a marijuana.
Oh, but because he comes up to them. Right? Stop. Are you losing?
The officer wrote as he ran the vehicle, presumably the license plate.
Wait, he pulls him over.
They were already parked on the side of the road 18 inches from the curb, and he came, I guess, parked behind, and he was running the vehicle, and then the passenger side door opened, a black female exited and approached his vehicle, the patrol vehicle, and he observed an odor of marijuana on the female, and then he made contact with the driver, where he observed marijuana odor in the vehicle. So the female approached the patrol vehicle.
Show me in the penal code that code. What is the penal code for that?
Regarding the 18 inches from the curb, sir, is that the
Yeah.
issue of what we're talking about?
Yeah, because they come to him because he comes to them. Right, they're just parked. He comes to them. It's got to be a transportation code, not penal code, you know?
And Your Honor, regarding the timeline of events, it does appear that when they were parked that distance away, which could be arguably further, I don't know what it looked like at that time, but the female passenger is the one who exited first, and that was before officers ever made contact with them. So I don't know if you were thinking that the officers approached them first, but I just wanted to clarify that she approached first.
What time of day or night was this?
I didn't see that, John. Take a second. At 4 in the morning.
And Your Honor, I
4 in the morning.
4:30 a.m.
And he can delineate at 4 in the morning that parking 18 inches from a curb.
and I found the regulation, the statute in the transportation code where it says you have to park within 18 inches.
At 4 in the morning, you can tell.
Your Honor, the officer was.
Yes, I don't think so. All right, I'm going to find no probable cause. All right.
Yes,
Guys, be careful. Right. You know, they're always out there. Just be careful. Do something with your life. Knowledge is power. Get into school, get an education, do something with your life. Life is hard as it is. And it only gets more difficult the older you get. All right? Okay, guys, please.
And we'll be sure to call the officer on this case to
Whatever you need.
understand why he did in fact pull them over for this amount of space.
No. No. What?
It was,
What?
I was in the passenger seat.
Stop. Don't. We'll get there.
I don't want to see you either.
Ms. Jackson, you now stand charged with possession of marijuana. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you.
Yes, Judge. On September 26, 2024, officers conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle bearing an expired agent tag. Officers made contact with the occupant of the vehicle. Defendant Cephas was arrested for a DWLI, and defendant Jackson had active warrants out of Webster PD. Officers conducted an inventory of the vehicle and located 2 small black bags containing a green leafy substance on the passenger side where defendant Jackson was sitting, and a backpack containing a firearm in the trunk. The substance was identified as marijuana based on training and experience. The weight was 4 grams or 0.141 ounces. The defendants denied ownership of both. The defendants were identified with Texas driver's license.
Okay, I have so many questions.
Yes, Judge.
So first off, you said defendants.
Yes,
plural.
there are 2 defendants, Your Honor.
So the driver,
Yes, Your Honor.
okay, and then the weed was found where?
Under the passenger seat where defendant Jackson was sitting
In what?
in a 2 small black bags.
How do you attribute the bags to her?
Your Honor, they were just located on the side of the vehicle where she was sitting.
So could be his. Like just puts it there. I don't know.
Yes, Your Honor, but the affirmative link would be in the proximity of where she was sitting as well.
Have anything else that identifies the bag as her? The guy is the person's a guy, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so is there a lipstick? Is there anything else that would identify the bag as hers?
No, Your Honor. All we have is that it was located on the passenger side glove box, just those 2 small black bags.
Glove box.
Yes, Your Honor.
Absolutely.
It was in the glove box.
Stop it. Are you losing?
Yes, Your Honor. That's all we have.
Okay, I'm gonna find no probable cause. Be careful with the company you keep. When you hang with dogs, you get fleas, Miss Jackson. You know this. Come on. All right, please, just take a seat. Good morning, Mr. Barnes.
Good morning. Sorry, David. Sorry.
You made it out.
Yes, I did.
Just, we're not asking for much, man. Just be careful, behave. Don't do anything you shouldn't do, Is those cases are still open in Fort Bend or what?
The case is still open in Fort Bend. It's still pending. Your next court date is down there.
It's on March. Not all the cases are open.
One of them still open. Paul Two's representing him. I talked to Paul yesterday, and it's set for sometime in March. I can't recall the exact
It's
date.
okay. Have we done PC on this yet or no?
We haven't done anything because he was in custody.
Right. Okay, so we're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. I just want to see if there's enough to go forward on your case. I don't know what happened. Okay, Alex, please.
Judge. On September 4th, 2024, the officer observed a hand-to-hand transaction between the driver of a parked vehicle and another individual. The defendant was a passenger in the vehicle, and the officer approached and smelled a strong odor of marijuana. The officer asked the defendant to step out of the vehicle and saw in plain view a scale in the driver's side door, and the officer detained the defendant and the driver. The officer found a bag of marijuana in the defendant's waistband pursuant to a pat-down, and the weight of the marijuana was 1.27 ounces.
Telling me he saw him do a hand-to-hand transaction or someone else?
The driver of the vehicle was a hand-to-hand transaction, and when he approached the vehicle, he asked the defendant and the driver who did a hand-to-hand transaction to exit. And furthermore, the officer smelled an odor of marijuana.
I know, but why would he search him?
What?
I get it on the driver because he sees the hand-to-hand contact with them, but he's just sitting there.
The only thing would be officer safety, just the pat down. That
All right, Mr. Barnes, I'm gonna find no probable cause. Just be careful, all right? Really. You hang with dogs, what happens? No. You get fleet. Well, you can get bit too, right? Please,
He's a bad dog.
just don't hang out with the wrong people, all right?
Yes, sir.
Come on. Let's roll, nerds. You said 16?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. McLean. Sir, you're charged with interference with the duties of a public servant. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and/or a $2,000 fine. We're going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney present. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you.
Yes, sir. An officer initiated a traffic stop in Harris County, Texas, after observing the defendant exceed a speed limit of 45 miles per hour and make unsafe lane changes. The defendant did not have his driver's license, but told the officer his name and date of birth. While the officer was running the defendant's name, he observed the defendant exit his vehicle, and the officer told the defendant to get back inside the vehicle. And the defendant responded, "Do I have to?" The officer exited the vehicle and attempted to detain the defendant. The defendant tensed up and locked his arms.
Everything is conclusory. And what has he done wrong? What?
With the initial lane changes, unsafe lane changes, and the exceeding the speed limit that prompted the stop. And then at that point, he was just
Stop. How exceeding speed limit? How fast was he going? I mean,
I spoke to the officer this morning. He told me that he was pacing the defendant at 54 miles per hour.
okay, in a what?
I'm sorry.
In a what? I mean, if it's on 610, he's fine, right? And then he's interference duties. What is he interfering with? What did he do wrong?
I think it was after the stop was initiated, the officer was running the plates. The defendant stepped out of his vehicle. The officer told him to get back in the vehicle. The defendant said, "Do I have to?" The officer told me that.
And that's the basis of arrest?
Yes, but you're on.
Don't. Are you losing?
No, sir.
Okay.
And Your Honor, furthermore, as he was attempting to detain him, he locked his arms and tensed up. So as he was attempting to detain him, following that incident of him telling him to get back to the vehicle. And it was
That's the basis for arrest.
it was just a temporary detention. He was just attempting to detain him while he was trying to
What's he
investigate.
doing wrong?
He had
What's he doing wrong?
65. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I'm to find no probable cause. No, it's just, he gets out of the car and then it just the virtue of fact him getting out in the car, it's interfering with the duties. Really? No, just when you get into, just be careful out there, man.
Yes, sir.
Life is hard as it is.
Sir.
When you get into, you gotta be careful, man.
Yes, sir.
People are always out to get you. Be nice. It's not hard. Things will go well for you. Look, I got it. I'm with you, okay? Just hang tight with me for a second, okay? All right. Come on up, sir.
Please, respond. Judge,
The raising end.
thanks again.
Raising.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, sir. So you're charged with interference with the duties of a public servant, and this is a Class B misdemeanor. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and/or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you. We're going to do probable cause. Just hang tight, please.
Officers were dispatched to a disturbance between the defendant and an Uber driver in Harris County, Texas. The officer stated that when he arrived, both parties were calm and smoking with one another. Officer stated that he saw that the defendant was intoxicated and asked whether the defendant's wife would come and get him. The defendant said his wife would. And the defendant and the Uber driver began going back and forth with each other about charges. An officer made the decision to detain the defendant and take him to a sobering center. Officer asked the defendant to put his hands behind his back, and defendant tensed his arms. Additional officers arrived and detained D.
Judge, I know it's not, you don't argue.
Tensed his arms? Really?
Judge, I know it's not time to argue probable, so I like
No.
shit out a little bit.
I already got it. I understand. Just you're tensing your arms? That's madness. We have enough cases. Come on. No, I'm going to find no probable cause. Just remember, when you're out there in the free world, if you're gonna get lit, be very careful. Do you understand, Mr. Thurston?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, it's okay, Judge. We're dismissing the case.
Just be careful, you know? Really? Okay, all right, we got you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hager. I mean, doing the right thing, I got it, that's why.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, always a pleasure, Mr. Hager.
Good seeing you, Judge.